Uh, Virgo, stop. Stop wiping your eyes. Stop telling yourself that the ache in your chest is just the weather changing, just exhaustion, just the residue of a dream you cannot quite remember. Stop pretending that you have not felt it, that slow, seismic shift in the atmosphere, like the pressure dropping before a storm that has been traveling toward you across an ocean of silence. Someone is coming back. Not in the way they left, not with the casual arrogance of a person who believed the door would always be unlocked, not with the half-hearted tap of someone testing whether the hinges still remember their weight. They are coming back with their heart in their bare hands, dripping. They are coming back with a voice that has been stripped of every excuse, every deflection, every polished lie they once told themselves was protection. They are coming back with tears, Virgo, real tears. The kind that do not perform for an audience, the kind that burn the skin and blur the vision and make a person look ugly, vulnerable, demolished. And wrapped inside those tears, heavier than the salt and the grief and the shame, is the truth, the whole truth. The truth you stopped asking for because you convinced yourself you no longer needed it. The truth you buried under layers of self-preservation, telling yourself that closure was a myth invented by people who could not handle the silence. But before we walk into the room where they will kneel, before we open the letter that has been bleeding ink in their pocket, before we feel the first drop of their remorse land on the floor between you like a contract written in water, if your breath just caught, if your ribs just tightened around a name you swore you would not speak again, if you feel the peculiar, terrifying sensation of your own walls being knocked on from the inside by a truth that refuses to stay buried, then stop and anchor yourself here. Support this channel by liking this transmission, subscribing, and leaving your energy in the comments below. These messages are soul surveys, Virgo. They map the terrain of exactly the heart that needs to hear them, and your engagement keeps the line open for every other Virgo who's about to receive a visitor they never thought would arrive with humility in their hands. There is more revelation flowing through, and the depth of it will reach places in you that you sealed shut with steel. Now, let me tell you what is actually happening, because this is not a simple apology. This is not the text message that says, "my bad," or the voicemail that trails off into static. This is an exorcism. A person is walking toward you right now who has been possessed by their own guilt for longer than you know. They have been haunted, not by you, not by your memory alone, but by the specific, granular, unbearable knowledge of exactly what they did, the exact moment they chose themselves over you, the exact sentence they spoke that they knew would wound you deepest, the exact night they turned away from your tenderness because tenderness felt like a trap that would force them to grow. They have been living with a tenet inside their chest, a squatter called accountability, and it has been eating them alive from the inside out. They have tried to drown it. They have tried to outrun it. They have tried to bury it under new distractions, new bodies, new narratives where they were the victim and you were simply too much, too intense, too demanding, too Virgo for them to handle. But the tenant would not leave. It grew teeth. It grew claws. It grew a voice that sounds exactly like yours in the quiet hours, asking the question they could never answer. Why? And Virgo, they are coming back because they finally have the answer, not a comfortable one, not a sanitized version that makes them look like a wounded bird who simply did not know how to love. No. The truth they are carrying is heavy enough to break their back. It is the truth of their own cowardice. The truth of their own selfishness, the truth that they saw your love, your loyalty, your meticulous, devoted, sacrificial way of showing up for them, and they chose to interpret it as weakness because your strength made them feel small. They chose to sabotage what you built because building with you would have required them to become someone they were too lazy, too frightened, too spiritually underdeveloped to become. They saw the future. You were offering a future built on consistency, on honesty, on the boring, beautiful, daily grind of real partnership, and they got cold feet. Not because the future was flawed, but because they knew in the deepest, most unguarded chamber of their heart that they were not ready to meet you there. And instead of admitting that, instead of speaking that inadequacy into the light and asking for time, for help, for patience while they grew, they chose destruction. They chose to burn the bridge while standing on it. They chose to wound you preemptively so that you would be the one to walk away, so that they would not have to be the villain, so that they could tell themselves that you left, that you gave up, that you were the one who could not handle the heat. But the lie curdled, Virgo. It soured in their stomach. It became a poison that no amount of denial could neutralize. And now, after months or years of carrying this toxin, their body has rebelled. Their spirit has gone on strike. They cannot sleep without seeing your face in the darkness behind their eyelids, not as an accusation, but as a mirror. A mirror that reflects back to them the person they could have been if they had not been so afraid. They are coming back because the weight of what they did has become physically unbearable. Their shoulders are curved under it. Their voice has developed a crack that never used to be there. Their laughter has become hollow, a sound that bounces off the walls of empty rooms and returns to them as mockery. They are coming back because they are dying inside, and the only antidote they can find is your eyes. Not your forgiveness, necessarily, not even your love, just your eyes. Just the chance to stand in front of you and be seen by the one person who always saw them clearly, even when they were hiding, especially when they were hiding. They have rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, Virgo. I see it in the field. I see them standing in front of a mirror, practicing the words until their throat is raw. They have written letters and burned them. They have typed texts and deleted them. They have driven to your street and circled the block, their hands shaking on the wheel, their heart hammering a rhythm of dread and desperate hope. They are terrified of you, not because you are cruel, not because you will shout. They are terrified because you are the only person whose opinion of them ever mattered, and they know that when they finally stand before you, stripped of every defense, they will see in your face whether they have become irredeemable in your eyes. They are coming with tears, because tears are the only currency they have left. They have spent everything else. They have spent their pride. They have spent their time. They have spent their illusions. And what remains is a solvent so pure it can only be expressed through salt and water and the broken, hiccuping sound of a person who has finally stopped performing and started bleeding. And Virgo, the truth they bring is not what you think. You have imagined 100 versions of this confession. You have played out scenes in your mind where they admit to a simple mistake, a moment of weakness, a miscommunication that spiraled beyond their control. You have prepared yourself for an apology that is really just a request for absolution, a way for them to clear their conscience and move on. But what is coming is darker than that. It is more honest than that. It is a confession of intentional harm. They are going to tell you that they knew exactly what they were doing. that every withdrawal was calculated, that every silence was a test, that every time they made you feel like you were too much, they were actually terrified that you were exactly enough, exactly the right amount, exactly the person they had been searching for, and that recognition scared them into sabotage. They are going to admit that they watched your love like a man watches a wildfire approaching his house, not with the intention of fighting it, but with the intention of lighting a backburn so destructive that nothing could ever grow there again. They wanted to make sure you could never come back, because if you could come back, it meant their rejection had not been final, and if it was not final, they might have to face the fact that they had thrown away the best thing that ever happened to them. They are going to tell you about the nights, Virgo. The nights after they left, or after they pushed you away, or after they turned your love into a weapon and used it to force you to retreat. They are going to tell you that the freedom they thought they wanted tasted like rust, that the space they demanded felt like a coffin, that every person they met after you felt like a grayscale photocopy of a color they had taken for granted. They are going to tell you that they tried to replace you, that they went looking for your warmth in bodies that were cold, for your wit in conversations that were shallow, for your stability in people who were themselves drowning. And every time they failed, the failure was not just disappointing, it was damning. It was evidence in a trial they were conducting against themselves, and the verdict was always the same. You were the one. You were the standard. You were the home they burned down to keep from having to pay the mortgage of vulnerability. And now they are homeless. Now they are wandering. Now they are coming back to the ashes with a bucket of tears, hoping against hope that something might still grow from the scorched earth. But Virgo, I need you to hear me with a clarity that cuts through the emotion of this moment. They are not coming back to fix you. They cannot fix you. They broke you, yes, or they contributed to the breaking, or they exploited the cracks that were already there. But the repair is not their job. The repair has always been yours, and whether you know it or not, you have been repairing yourself in the dark, in the silence, in the absence of their attention. You have been stitching your own wounds with thread made of self-respect. You have been rebuilding your foundation with a material they do not even recognize, because it was forged in the exact fire they set. You are not the same person they left. You are stronger. You are quieter. You are more dangerous, because you no longer need them to validate your existence. And when they see you, when they finally stand in front of you and witness the monument you have become in their absence, it is going to devastate them. It is going to be the final blow to the ego that told them you would always be waiting, always be available, always be a little bit broken so that they could feel needed. They are going to see that you survived them, not just survived, transcended, and that sight is going to drop them to their knees before they even open their mouth to speak. They are going to cry, Virgo, not the performative tears of someone who wants to be comforted. These tears are going to be ugly. They are going to be accompanied by a sound that is half animal, half prayer, a moan that comes from the pelvic floor, from the root, from the place where shame lives when it has outgrown the heart. They are going to reach for you, and their hands are going to tremble. They are going to try to speak, and the words are going to come out in the wrong order, tangled in snot and regret. They are going to say, "Forgive me not as a demand, but as a drowning person gasping for air." And in that moment, you are going to feel everything. The old love, the old hope, the old version of yourself that would have rushed to wipe their tears, that would have folded yourself into a smaller shape so that they could feel big enough to stand, that would have accepted the apology as a bridge back to the familiar pain of being undervalued. You are going to feel the gravitational pull of your own compassion, and it is going to require every ounce of your strength not to collapse into it. Because Virgo, forgiveness is not a door you owe them. Forgiveness is a key you hold in your hand, and you get to decide which lock it opens. If you choose to forgive them, you must do it from the mountaintop of your new self, not from the valley of your old need. You must forgive them not because their tears have purchased your mercy, but because your own peace has grown large enough to contain their offense without letting it poison you anymore. You must forgive them, if you forgive them, as an act of sovereignty, not as an act of reunion, because they are coming back with the truth, yes, but the truth does not erase the past. The truth does not stitch shut the wounds. The truth is just a light turned on in a room that has been dark for too long, and what that light reveals is not always pretty. It reveals the exact shape of the damage, the exact depth of the cut, the exact color of the blood they spilled. And seeing it clearly is necessary, but it is not healing. Healing is what you do after the light is on. And healing is not their gift to you, it is your own. They want you to know that they understand now, Virgo. They understand that your love was not clinginess, it was devotion. They understand that your questions were not interrogations. They were attempts to build a bridge across the distance they were secretly digging. They understand that your standards were not impossible. They were simply the minimum requirements for entry into a life that was actually worth living. They understand that the future you offered them was not a cage, it was a kingdom, and they were too blinded by their own smallness to see the crown you were holding out to them. They are going to say these things, and some of them will be true. Some of them will be the genuine, hard-won fruit of a person who has finally done the inner work they should have done while they were still in your presence. But some of it will still be the residue of their ego, the part of them that wants to be seen as the tragic hero of their own story, the wounded soul who made a mistake but has now seen the light. You will have to discern the difference. You will have to taste their words and know which ones are nourishment and which ones are still poison wrapped in prettier paper. And Virgo, here is what they are not expecting. They are not expecting your silence. They have prepared for your anger. They have braced themselves for your tears, your accusations, your rightful rage. They have imagined a scene where they offer their confession and you either crumble into their arms or shatter into pieces that they can then help pick up, thus restoring their sense of usefulness, their role as the savior after being the destroyer. But what they are not prepared for is the possibility that you have already moved beyond the need for their apology, that you have already metabolized the grief and converted it into fuel, that you have already built a life in the exact shape of your own desires, and their return is not the missing piece. It is just a visitor at the gate of a fortress that no longer needs a key from them to remain secure. Your silence, if you choose it, will be more devastating than any scream. Your calm, if you offer it, will be more disorienting than any storm, because it will prove that you healed without their help, that you grew without their water, that you became whole without their permission, and that wholeness is the one thing they cannot compete with. It is the one thing they cannot apologize their way into. It is the one thing that makes them realize with a finality that drops the floor out from under them that they lost you, not when you walked away, but when they failed to see that your walking away was the beginning of your ascension, not the end of your story. They are going to ask for another chance, Virgo. Maybe not in words, maybe in the language of their posture, their proximity, their tears falling onto your shoulder. They are going to want to know if there is a crack in the door, a sliver of light, a maybe that they can nurse into a yes. And you are going to have to decide in that moment whether the person kneeling before you is the person they claim to have become, or whether they are simply the same child wearing a new costume, hoping that the theatrics of their remorse will buy them re-entry into a theater that has already closed. You are going to have to trust your gut, which has been sharpened by their absence into a blade so fine it can split a hair of deception from a mile away. You are going to have to ask yourself, does this apology feel like a beginning or like an ending dressed in beginning's clothing? Does their truth feel like a seed that could grow, or like a stone they are laying at your feet to weigh you down? Do their tears feel like rain that could nourish your soil, or like a flood that wants to erode the banks you have spent so long rebuilding? Whatever you decide, Virgo, decide it for yourself, not for the version of you that still aches in the small hours, not for the child inside you that just wants the story to have a happy ending, not for the hope that maybe this time it will be different. Decide for the woman or the man you are right now, the one who knows the cost of admission into your life because you have paid it yourself in full with interest. The one who understands that love is not a feeling but a practice, and that a person who did not practice it when it mattered must now demonstrate a discipline they have never shown before. The one who knows that tears are easy, but consistency is hard, and that you would rather have a dry-eyed partner who shows up every single day than a weeping poet who disappears when the sun rises. Decide for your future, decide for your peace, decide for the life that is waiting for you on the other side of this conversation, whether that life includes them or not. If you choose to let them in, Virgo, let them in as a newcomer, not as a returning hero, not as a familiar presence who gets to bypass security because they used to have a key. They must earn every inch of ground they stand on. They must prove that their confession was not a peak but a plateau, a new normal from which they will not retreat when the shame wears off and the comfort of old patterns beckons. They must understand that your forgiveness is not a reset button. It is a probation, a trial period where their actions will be weighed against their words with a precision that would impress even your meticulous Virgo mind. And if they falter, if they retreat, if they show you that the tears were just a storm and not a climate change, then you must be willing to close the door again, this time with finality, this time without looking back. Because second chances are sacred, but third chances are self-betrayal. And if you choose not to let them in, Virgo, if you look at their tears and see only the reflection of your own old pain, if you feel nothing but the quiet, solid certainty that your story no longer has a role for them, then let them go with a grace that is sharper than any sword. Do not punish them. Do not weaponize your healing against their brokenness. Simply tell them the truth, that you hear them, that you see their remorse, that you believe they are sorry, and that sorry is no longer enough to change the architecture of your life, that the room they once occupied has been renovated, that the door they once walked through has been sealed, that the heart they once held has been recalibrated to a frequency that no longer recognizes their signal. Let them leave with their truth, if not with your forgiveness. Let them carry the weight of their own lesson back into the world, where perhaps it will make them better for someone else, even if that someone else is not you. They are coming, Virgo, with the tears, with the truth, with the shattered remains of a person who finally understands the magnitude of what they destroyed. Let them come. Let them speak. Let them weep. And then, when the storm of their confession has passed, look at the landscape of your own heart and ask, what grows here now? Is there space for their roots? Or has the soil been claimed by stronger, hardier, more loyal things? The answer is yours. The choice is yours. The future is yours. And whatever you decide, decide it like the sovereign being you have become. Not like the wounded child they once knew, not like the hopeful lover who once waited by the phone, but like the tower you have built from the ruins of their absence, unshakable, unapologetic, unmistakably free. If this message found the exact tender, fierce, complicated place in your heart where forgiveness and sovereignty meet, if you felt the truth of their approaching tears vibrating in your bones, if you know that you are ready to receive whatever they bring without letting it topple what you have built, then claim this power right now. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment below declaring that your forgiveness is yours to give or withhold, that your heart is a fortress with a door that only opens from the inside, and that you are ready for the truth, whatever it brings. Your energy keeps these transmissions alive, Virgo, and there is more clarity coming for you very soon. Stay open, stay guarded, and remember, the tears they bring are their baptism, not yours. Your healing is already complete. Everything else is just a conversation. Stay strong, Virgo. Stay whole. And let the truth, when it arrives, find you standing in your own light, exactly where you were always meant to be.